I found my Bill's Reddit account and discovered his dark plans for my family and my sister. What should I do? Original post. First and foremost, I will not be sharing Bill's username. I know this will cause most people to call this post fake, but his account has a lot of private information about many members of my family, including what are essentially dox bins and other private info. He doesn't know I know about this account, and I don't want anyone to go to his account to leave comments or message him. I'm 21 feet. My sister, Jane 28F, has been with John, 27M, for 2 years. I found his account totally randomly. I googled his name as he's a journalist and found a Reddit account with the same name. Think John Doe is dead 1997. I clicked on it and found tons of Reddit posts ranting about his girlfriend's family, mainly her little sister. At first, I thought I just came across a random, disturbed individual, but clicking on the post revealed more. Both my sister and I have unique names. Not super rare, but uncommon enough that they're noticeable in a list of names, and neither of us have met anyone with the same names as us. Plus, our surnames aren't super basic either. Think Aurora Fernsby. Fake, but similar name to myself. He also mentions enough personal details for it to be undeniably him. I wouldn't be writing this unless I was 99% sure. The posts are all either posted to vent/rant subs or straight to his Reddit page. They all have 0 to 3 upvotes and a few comments spread across, from what I can tell to be 100 posts. They're all mostly complaining about Jane, me, or our mother. The most concerning post is about me, though. I have a varied past with men, mainly influenced by SA. I'm in therapy, but it has made me more weary around men I do or don't know. This, apparently, enrages John. In this post, he details how he plans to offer to drive me home next I visit them, but instead of taking me home, he'll detour and take the scenic route through the country lanes in our town. He says he wants to make me afraid enough that I'll do something to her. But after 15 or so minutes, he'll turn around and drive me home. Therefore showing me that not all men are creeps and want to hurt her. His logic seems to be that since he acted weird but didn't hurt me, it should click in her brain that not all men are bad. The post is very long, like scrolling down for 15 seconds long, but he rants about how it's unfair that I flinch around him when he makes big gestures or yells at the TV, because he'd never do anything. He says he can fix me more than my therapist. A lot of the post is weird incel-y talking points. I was bawling while reading the whole thing. There is one comment telling him to get help, but John just responds, "I don't need help." She does. His comment history is also concerning. A lot of weird incel talking points, which doesn't make sense as he has a girlfriend. I'm not super versed in incel ideology. A lot of stuff about SA, women's roles in relationships, society, other races, ethnicities, religions, etc. I'm terrified of John. We weren't close before, but we didn't hate each other. To me, he was just a grown man with vastly different interests and we would never mesh cleanly. Now, I don't know what to think. My mind is frazzled. I'm going to tell my sister, but I don't know how. I have screenshots of everything, links, etc. I just don't know how to lay it all out. Also, I need coping mechanisms. I'm in a constant state of pre-panic attack. I can feel it in my chest, but it's not tipping over into a full panic attack, which is making me genuinely crazy. Sorry for the long post. Thanks in advance. Edit. As of 2 hours ago, I made my mom and uncle aware of what I've found. Every screenshot, screen recording and link. My sister is currently on a work trip, so we're waiting for her to come back in 2 days. His account is still up as of 20 minutes ago. Thanks for all your advice. Mom, uncle and I are figuring out the best way to tell my sister. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. Ooh, I did not want to be the first comment here. This is so much to unpack. Do you think your sister will believe you? Talk to your parents' family first. They should hear about your fear before they hear from your sister that you're talking shit. Is your sister safe? I have no clue what else to say other than I'm gonna come back in case anyone has coping mechanisms for your pre-panic attack thing. I'm experiencing the same thing and it's also driving me insane. Pre-panic attack is a good way to describe it. I've been struggling with it for years, but there's no medical term for it, so thanks for giving it a name. OP. Is your sister safe? This is why I want to tell her as soon as possible, because I don't know. Not anymore, anyway. They seem happy together, but now I'm rethinking everything. Thanks for your advice. Commenter. Why is he so obsessed with you? He has a girlfriend and prefers to vent about you. Are you that close to him? He is not in a normal place mentally. Show the text to your sister and mother. He can be abusive to your sister. OP. We're not close. I live closer to my sister than any of our family, so I see him fairly often. But I never go to see him, He's usually just there, which is fair because it's his home too. But I never go with the reason for hanging out with John, just my sister. We're not close. We don't have much in common but get along well enough. I had no interest in being his friend or anything before for many obvious reasons, but especially now. I have no idea why he's so obsessed with me. It's freaking me out. Commenter. How does he know so much about your trauma? Who told him? That's a very important question to solve beforehand. OP. Last year when I was essayed by my, now ex, I ended up calling John to pick me up because my ex lived in a different city and was supposed to give me a ride back. I had a breakdown in his car and told him what happened. I hadn't intended to tell anybody about what happened, but I couldn't keep it in. Also, my sister and I both witnessed abuse from our father, which I'm sure she told John about, and he, correctly, assumed I was also affected. Commenter. Does this mean your parents aren't safe advocates in this situation? OP. No, not at all. I'm planning on telling Mum too. The no telling anyone about the essay comment was more of a spur-of-the-moment traumatized and mortified 19-year-old OOP responds to a troll, included because she had a great response. But I don't think all men are evil. John literally just projected that onto me. He wrote that assumption in a post where he detailed, graphically, how he wanted to make me fear for my safety to fix me, because he's upset I have trauma and CPTSD. And I'm somehow as creepy as he is and terrifying? I would love a deep dive into how you can come to that conclusion, because reading some Reddit posts don't feel the same as what John is planning to. Update post. As I mentioned in my last post, I had made my mom and uncle aware of the situation. We all agreed that waiting for Jane to come home from a work trip to tell her was the best course of action. When she got back, we sat her down to explain everything. I showed her the screenshots, the posts, and walked her through everything John had said. She was quiet at first, just reading through the messages with this shocked look on her face. She started accusing me of overreacting or somehow getting the situation wrong. She said that maybe John was just venting and didn't actually mean any of it. She also suggested that I might be reading too much into his posts because of my past trauma. My mom and uncle tried to step in and back me up, but Jane wasn't having it. She kept saying that we were blowing things out of proportion and that we didn't understand John like she does. At this point, she was getting really upset and we were all talking over each other. Then Jane said that I've always been distant from John and that maybe he felt uncomfortable around me because of how I act. At that point, I was done. I made it clear that if she decided to stay with him, I would have to limit my contact with both of them. My mom and uncle backed me up on this, and we all said that we couldn't trust John to be part of our lives anymore after seeing what he wrote. Jane stormed out of the house after that. She's barely spoken to me since except for a couple of cold texts saying she needs to process the situation. On Monday, it's Wednesday today, Jane showed up at my door, completely unannounced. She looked like she hadn't slept, and the first thing she did was apologize. I was shocked because I wasn't expecting her to come around so quickly. She told me that after she left, she couldn't stop thinking about the posts, and she started going back over everything in her head. She said she told John about the situation and when I went to check, all his stuff has been deleted. This annoyed me and my mom, who was on the phone, as we told Jane to keep quiet for safety reasons. Luckily I have all the evidence saved. She said that John had blocked me on everything to preserve his career and that he was super pissed off with me for stalking him. He even told my sister that the account wasn't him, rather someone at work who hates him. I obviously don't know everything that happened between them, but it's caused a rift between them. I've moved in with my uncle for the time being as I was afraid of John showing up on these first few nights. We looked into legal options about the post but found nothing that would help us. My uncle said he's going to help me get in contact with his work, but I'm scared of John's reaction if I do that. As of now, my sister isn't totally settled on leaving John, so I've gone LC with her. She said her reasons for staying with John is because she just can't see John acting like this. Luckily I have friends and family who are on my side. Sorry this update is kinda bleak. Now to the next story, story 2. Am I the asshole for ruining an engagement by revealing the truth about my horrible ex from 10 years ago? Original post. A little backstory is needed, so please stick with me. Growing up I, F27, had a childhood friend Angie, F27, who was as close as a real sister. We spent entire weekends at each other's place, celebrated family events etc., from 6 years old till 18 years old. Elle even lived at her place in 2nd grade while my parents went to a nasty divorce. I learned to speak some Russian, as she is Russian, and she learned to speak some Spanish. Needless to say, her older brother and little sister were like a family to me. During our teenage years she had her 2 male best friends, one whom she started dating, and another one, Nico, now 29, who was Russian as well, whom I started dating at 17. Growing up, I had issues with a heart condition. I won't bore you with the details, but I had to take a lot of meds, but got healthier starting from the 16th. I didn't have to take them daily, but only when my heart rate became irregular. But then immediately, as it would become extremely painful, my heart would cramp, I would start to hyperventilate. All my friends knew this, Nico included, and that I would black out if my meds got taken with alcohol. I didn't smoke much or drink much growing up as a result, since I was worried about my health and only did drink at home or in a safe setting. Legal drinking age is 16 here, and I only drank wine or beer if at all. I had my first time with Nico at 17, and when my parents stayed at a retreat 2 weeks later, he came over to have a date night. I did drink 1 glass of wine, but started having health issues later, resulting in me taking my meds and being unconscious. I was a bit sore the next morning but didn't think much about it. 2 weeks later, I'm informing Nico that I'm late on my period and he starts to panic, confessing he had sex with me while I was unconscious. We had it before, so he didn't think much about it. Apparently he didn't have a condom, but since I was on the pill he figured it was all right, and he also didn't come in me, but in a tissue. I felt violated and disgusted by myself. I didn't know how to describe this and only told Angie about it. I was an utter mess for a few years, and wasn't able to have sex again until 2 years later. I didn't remember any of it, but was too ashamed to go to my mom or anybody else. I didn't think of it as rape back then. I was too young to really understand what and how I was violated, and Angie told me it's all right, I should break up if I feel bad about it, but we were in a relationship and did have sex before. I broke up with him the following day, and apparently he cried about his broken heart to her. As Nico and Angie were close and hanging out together a lot, they started dating a few months afterwards, and I had to see him every time when visiting her. I told her I'm not able to see him, but she didn't understand where I'm coming from. The contact stopped and we haven't texted or seen each other in years. I still followed her and her family and saw that her brother is expecting his first child. As I was extremely close with her family, I just commented on the Insta post expressing my gratitude when he reached out to me. I missed his wedding, but he wanted to ask if I would be interested in joining the baby shower, as it's been years and we've been extremely close before. He told me I was like a third little sister. I just asked if Nico will be attending as well, as Angie and him have been dating for 9 years now, and he said yes. I didn't elaborate much but just expressed that I'll send a small present if he can give me his current address but won't be attending. He kept on pestering me what exactly happened all those years ago and why I'm not in their lives anymore. Angie told her family I'm not able to see her with an ex of mine, but her brother thought there's more behind it. This is when I think I could be the asshole. I told him the truth about what happened back then. And while I didn't know it at 17, I know now that this was rape and I named it as such. I didn't receive any message back from him, but a few days later Angie reached out to me, furious. Nico had planned to propose during the baby shower, but Angie's brother is against it now, having learnt why I stopped the contact. She loves Nico and will stay with him, but by doing so, her brother said she is no longer a part of his life, as he doesn't want his little baby girl in the same family as a rapist. Since then I've been getting messages from old high school acquaintances, telling me I should have ignored it and not told anybody. Since I didn't speak up back then, I lost the right to do so now, and am a horrible person for ruining somebody's life over some stuff he did 10 years ago when he himself was a child as well. Am I truly the asshole for speaking up? AITA has no consensus bot. OP was NTA. Relevant comments. OP responds to multiple comments about how things are wrong, and she could speak up. OOP. I understand now how wrong it has all been, and that it's rape. But we grew up in a small town with approximately 5,000 people, and I honestly don't know which way it would have gone if I would have spoken up. He was 19 back then, 2 years older, and everybody is in everybody's business. It would have made sound back then, like it does now. They all still live there, and it has made its rounds. That's why so many of our old classmates are reaching out. Most of those who still live there have left me furious messages. They have known Nico for all their life, and are standing by him. I moved out when I was 20, my mom shortly after, and didn't stay in touch most. It still breaks my heart to get such a furious response from people who are my whole childhood. And thank you for all your best wishes, I genuinely appreciate it. OP did not ruin Nico's life. He did this himself. OP. I understand that what happened is on him. The backlash I am getting is because he apparently is not that person anymore, and in something he did as a teenager, according to Angie, should not ruin his life and is in no way related to the daughter her brother will have. I don't know if he will ever act out or do something, but it doesn't invalidate what happened to me, so thank you for confirming this. I just can't stop feeling bad about this having so many consequences. While I do not want to see Nico or Angie, I have made my peace with what happened to me back then. Commenter. But why are they attacking you and not the brother? You are not the one objecting to the marriage. Just feels like misogyny and victim blaming tbh. OOP. I guess because he is family, and I'm the outsider who ruined their family. I have been getting so many messages from people who didn't even have my number back then. I'm blocking the best I can. It's just hard to not let these comments get to your heart. Commenter. NTA. They got together so soon after the two of you broke up. I can't help but wonder if your friend was convincing you to break up with Nico because she was hoping to get with him all along. OPO, I honestly don't believe it. They've known each other for years and she broke up with her boyfriend 2 weeks before I broke up with Nico. It was a 5K town, even adding the people our age from nearby villages. Our school had 500 people attending, hence the options are very limited. OP on getting therapy in order to heal from her past trauma. OP. I was in therapy for 2 years and found peace with what happened to me. I am lucky, as I have no memory of it, but that didn't make it easier. It took me 2 years to be able to have any form of sexual contact again, but I am okay now. It's a part of me, but it's a part I can live with. Honestly, thank you for your kind words. OP on her health issues at the time when the incident happened. OP. Oh, it's not drunk blacked out. My medicine back then was supposed to lower my heart rate extremely, as I would have a racing heartbeat and my body would start to shut down, hyperventilating, my heart not being able to follow such strong use, and basically tripping over the high heart rate. My heart would start skipping beats, then not being able to follow my thin blood which flows faster than regular one, and the skipping would be the painful one, as it would start to cramp up. I'm sorry I'm not able to explain it better. English is not my primary language and I lack the medical vocabulary to fully describe it. The pill slowed my heartbeat and general body functions, thus making me extremely tired. I'd mixed it with alcohol. It would basically act like a super strong sleeping pill. My body could be thrown off a cliff and I wouldn't wake up. I did give consent for the first time we had sex, but that was our first and only time. I don't know if we would have had sex back then if I would have been conscious, as I didn't like it, being my first time and all, and wasn't that eager to repeat it. I don't think calling it rape is wrong, but what I had issues was if I should have approached this subject more sensible. In that way I can understand that I ruined their engagement plans for next week, or his surprise of one update one. First of all, I am immensely thankful for all the people who took the time to not only read through my story but also comment. I read every single comment and tried to respond to as many as possible. It gave me a little bit of hope of compassion for victims of rape and also the courage to not cave to the backlash I received. Mental update. Reading all the messages defending my choices on speaking up made me realize how insecure I was about what I am allowed to do and how much I was trying to make it right to other people besides myself. This especially included Nico and Angie. All of you are right. If Nico had changed, he would have apologized, reached out, or tried to make amends in some way. Either when word got to him from his brother-in-law or at some earlier point in his life. My former best friend Angie should have been able to feel some sort of compassion if she had any respect for me as a human being or the time we spent together. Her reaction showed that I shouldn't hesitate in my actions. I went to therapy from 21 onwards and thought I moved on from the rape as best as I could, but I realized how ashamed I still am almost 10 years later about an incident that wasn't my fault at all. I was ashamed to speak up back then and afraid that people around me would look differently at me. And somehow I still felt bad about speaking up today, so I am trying to own what happened to me now and not apologize for other people's behaviors, especially as they don't even show me respect. What happened since then? I archived every nasty message I got on WhatsApp so I wouldn't have to read them, but would have the proof if needed at a later point. Angie's mom called me the following day of the incident, crying. I shouldn't have answered the phone, but during the 10 years of friendship I saw her as an aunt, almost a second mom. She always joked that while her children would run around the house doing whatever, I would always take the time to drink tea and talk with her, showing her more love and time than her actual children. While she said she's sorry for what has been and for what I went through as a child, she couldn't believe that I would ruin Angie's happiness over something like that. With Angie's brother refusing to have Nico as part of the family and Angie standing by Nico's side, it's divided their family and she is heartbroken. She has grown to love Nico like family as well and has known him for nothing more than a considerate young man who she knows will make her daughter happy. It wasn't nasty names or angry talk, just a heartbroken mother who faked to acknowledge my pain and saw the fault in me. Angie's mom tried to get me to apologize or to take it back, but I refused as I don't see the fault in me. With everything that has happened, I believe that Nico hasn't changed and is just hiding it better somehow. He can see how people are standing by him and supporting his behavior so he won't have to change. And that is something I didn't want to indulge. Angie's mom not even one used the word rape, and I tried to correct her every time she talked about it. trying to name it for her to understand better, but she would just start sobbing more and it didn't make sense for us to continue to talk. Angie's mom used to be in contact with mine for some time, and she reached out to her after our talk. I was afraid that my mom would find out, since she's from a more conservative background. We had a long talk and I didn't get to see her, physically, yet, but she apologized for not being there for me or not making me feel like I can talk to her. I tried to calm her as best as I could, but when she asked me if my current partner knows I was used like that, I got angry. She was scared my partner would leave me if he found out, implying it was something that made me less precious or appealing. When she asked me to keep it a secret from our family abroad and in our country, I hung up. She was acting exactly the way I was afraid she would, as if it's something shameful. It was especially hard as I am trying my best to move away from the feeling of shame. She has since apologized, but it's clear that her view of me has changed. I don't yet know how to deal with it, but that's something to worry about in the next few weeks. As some of you suggested, I wrote Angie's brother, Sven, again and apologized for the mess, but am glad that it is out in the open and how proud I am that he's defending his family. I asked if his old email is still working, as I would just send a gift card. He didn't respond, but I got a message from his wife 2 days ago. She thanked me for speaking up and informing them about Nico. There were apparently a few moments that made her uncomfortable, some jokes Nico made, and in retrospective she can see why. Sven apparently informed her the moment he got my initial text, and both of them have since seen Angie but not Nico. She refuses to be in the same room or house as him, and the same goes to their unborn daughter. Sven and Angie's mom has been at their place multiple times to beg to forgive Nico, and Sven caved a little. Angie and Nico will get married. Sven will attend but his wife will not. He is allowed in the family but not in contact with either Sven's wife or daughter. Those restrictions are not for Angie. Sven was suffering trying to ease his mother's worries and was not able to take a stand and cut them out completely. This is a compromise they made without his wife's approval, and she told me she's trying her best to cut them out of their life indefinitely. She wanted to move back, closer to her family as well, and thinks this is a perfect opportunity but isn't sure if she can follow through. His wife told me she's terribly sorry for all the issues that came my way and it has been a lot trying to handle the situation on their side. Sven knows it's not my fault but he doesn't want contact. It's hard for him to talk or see my name because even though he knows I'm not the guilty party, in some way I was the bearer of bad news and he sees me as the start of all this drama. She told me a few times that neither believe I'm the bad guy, they just are tired with everything and it's just been extremely hard on them. That's all that has happened so far. I am frustrated about how everything came to be. It feels like Nico will just continue with his life without having to be remorseful. I didn't want him to suffer, but I think some part of me wanted to at least receive some kind of apology for all the suffering I went through afterwards. I'm having to deal with my mother and her changed shameful view on me, and even though I'm happy it's all out, it's extremely hard to stand by my choices. My partner and my best friends both have been my shoulder to cry on during this ordeal. My best friend was especially enraged for me, and I am extremely grateful to have both by my side. Right now I'm just emotionally drained, but I'm sure it will be better once a few weeks pass. Comments. Commenter 1, you spoke up and did the right thing. If others can't handle the truth, that's their problem. Keep focusing on your healing and support. Commenter 2. NTA. Unfortunately, it's a tale as old as time. The woman is blamed and the rapist gets off without a blemish. Only by speaking the truth over and over will the situation improve, and when the boomers die off. Commenter 3. 100% the right thing. What you did may keep Nico from attacking someone else, or may encourage one of his other victims to step up. You never know how much people like you help everyone else, when you stand up and speak out and are not ashamed of what was not your fault, but will point the finger at the one to shame. You're making the world a better place. I'm sorry for the family Nico misled and the wife who was foolish enough to stay with him, but it's no longer your business. You did the right thing and it's going to help others. If no one else says it to you, thank you for doing all this. You are amazing. Update 2. My first post was 3 months ago and this one will be my last update for now. It is not a good one, but I sincerely wish to leave it all behind me. That includes distancing myself from this Reddit account. These posts helped me let go of my anger, similar to a journal, and I am grateful for all the people who are enraged with me. I hope to open it again someday, with a final happy update, but for now every little pop-up is a reminder of the anxiety I am still dealing with, and I do not have the energy to deal with this topic outside of my therapy anymore. Short summary for those who don't want to read the old post. Nico raped me when I was his girlfriend 10 years ago. I didn't see it as rape back then as I was unconscious. Afterwards I broke up with him. Shortly after, my best friend Angie from elementary school started dating him, and they have been together for almost 10 years. I couldn't bear seeing him and cut contact with her and her family, with whom I was really close. Her brother Sven reached out to me 3 months ago after I left a short congratulation on a pregnancy picture with his wife. He invited me to their baby shower and I declined. After a lot of back and forth about him asking me and being suspicious as to why the contact broke off in the first place, and why I refused to be in the same space as his sister's boyfriend, I confessed what happened back when I was 17. Afterwards, his family had a huge fight, with him wanting to cut Nico out of their lives for being a rapist and his mom and sister standing by Nico. I was the scapegoat and received a log of hurtful messages from both their friends and former classmates. They called me out on ruining a man's life based on a childish mistake. Nico was 19 back then. And even Angie's mom reached out to me. I was left to pick up my life, my mom being more ashamed than understanding, and started therapy again. I removed almost everybody tied to that incident: Sven, Angie, Nico, their family, old classmates. And only kept contact with old classmates who sended me messages of support. Update 2. I work in a very specialized field. To get the proper qualification, it takes on average 6 to 8 years, bachelor, master and then state bar to be allowed to practice. While it is not very competitive, not a lot of people choose this profession, and it is highly sought after. My current company paid for my master's and my extensive course as preparation for the bar exam, and I have been doing well there. My HR department called me 2 months ago. Apparently they have been getting a lot of outside calls from Angie's mother and other relatives, saying I am involved in a Me Too scandal and being a liability for the company as I don't have issues ruining the lives of men. How they could imagine this could change anything, I do not understand. I work for a global company, they have known me for years, I never had any issues prior, and quite frankly, they do not care. However, they have been getting frustrated with the amount of calls and apparently even reached out to the police, and the calls have stopped since. Nonetheless, they reached out to me to check on my mental well-being, offering to give me paid leave, till it settles a little bit, and offering company paid therapy. Therapy is covered by my country's health insurance, but it is tricky to get one without waiting time, but I already had my old one on retainer and started going right after the incident. They made it clear that they invested a good amount of money in me and do not wish to lose me. I was ashamed that this part of my private life slipped into my professional one. It started to influence the career I worked hard for years to build, and while my company assured me that it would not affect the workload and clients I'm getting, word got around, and it was clear for my colleagues that I am going through something nasty, and the company does not want to deal with it. All this stress and anxiety led me to hyper-focus on my work. I took on whatever I could, paranoid that another call would come and for whatever reason, the company would move me to a dead-end department where my career would basically be over. At the same time, I started looking into different companies who would be able to buy me out, as I am tied to my current company for 5 years after graduation, 3 more are left, and I got a management position in a rival company with a huge salary jump. I couldn't be happy about it, I was just relieved I wouldn't get the pity looks from my colleagues anymore. I went to the police with all the hateful messages and the HR protocol with the call history and got a restraining order for Angie's mom. Should she contact my new company again, I have a public LinkedIn, it is needed for my job. At least I have some sort of proof that her words hold no meaning. I got asked if I want to pursue the rape but decided against it. It would open the whole ordeal again. I don't have proof, besides Nico and Angie not denying it, and quite honestly was afraid of what it would do to my career. I did keep contact with a good friend of mine who grew up in the same small town but moved away 5 or so years ago. As we share a Nintendo Switch Online family account, so we tend to be in contact at least once a year for a short phone call when she has to send me the money for the subscription, and we just tend to make a phone call with updates out of it. Yesterday was one of those days and the whole Nico thing came up. While she didn't hear it directly, her mom is still living in the small town and reached out to her, asking if I'm alright. She expressed her disapproval about how everything came to be, as she was close with Angie back in the days as well, and remembered how close we were and how often we spent time together, like sisters. She informed me that 2 months later, 7 baby girls were born, and while neither Nico or Angie were seen in any of the pictures or stories with the baby, a month ago Angie and Nico had an engagement party. Both Sven, the baby, and his wife participated, and are in the family pictures. I remember how enraged Sven's wife was, and how she told me she herself felt I was comfortable with Sven. Now it is all forgotten and forgiven. Nico's parents own a few houses and gave Angie and Nico a house close to their home, and Sven and his wife apparently bought a house in the same street. It is as if nothing happened at all. Listening to my friend telling me the updates, I'm honestly not sure if I should have asked her to not tell me anything. I just feel empty and betrayed. Not by Angie, she made her choice, not by Sven, It is his sister, and at the end of the day, when he asked me what happened and then didn't have the decency to answer me because he saw me as the one who ruined his family, it was clear that the truth didn't matter. Not by Sven's wife, who has a baby girl, an innocent daughter who she should protect as a mother, even though she told me she would do her best to keep her daughter away from Nico, but just by life. I fought to have it all behind me, just to have this old wound ripped open again 3 months ago when Sven kept plastering me. I got hate messages, but knowing that maybe someone would be hesitant towards Nico, when he showed strange behavior, made me feel like maybe I did right. Maybe by speaking up I helped a girl out to not be raped. My own mother was ashamed of what happened to me, told me I was to keep it quiet so my family abroad wouldn't get to hear it. Just for it all to be all good again for Nico. After everything that happened these last 3 months, I truly understand why victims of rape chose not to speak up. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. As a victim of the same type of abuse, though not RP, from a former romantic partner, you are worth more than you think. You do not need to suffer in silence, or shame. You didn't do anything wrong, or anything to be ashamed of. I am so proud of you for telling your truth. From one survivor to another, you are worthy of love, acceptance, and happiness. Life hasn't betrayed you, even though it feels like the world and everyone in it has turned their back on you. People do care, you matter, and you will outshine the shadows of your past when you find the courage to embrace the future with open arms. I believe in you, and I am proud of you. Keep being you. Commenter 2. I hope you get to heal and have no shame. From the interaction with your mother, she sounds Latin, which can be very tricky with this stuff. Nevertheless, the reaction is not on you but on her. Deutsch? I am unsure if so, but in some small tiny towns they are very backwards. All that doesn't matter, you get to deal with this at whatever rhythm you feel comfortable. You are not used. You are not less than. You are a woman that has survived. I send you a big hug. Ope. Yes, my mom is Latin, but I grew up in a small village with maybe 5,000 people. My grandpa used to be a pastor, which makes it so much harder. Even though my mom has been living in Germany for 30 years, speaks perfectly even with a local dialect, she's not progressive. It doesn't help that the small village itself isn't progressive either. I moved out at 18 and never looked back. In her eyes, it is my fault since I had a boyfriend at 17 and now I am damaged goods because of the rape. We don't talk about her hurtful words anymore, and she is trying her best to be more understanding, but at the end of the day it is internalized. I know I am not less, but after everything surfaced, the shame, the anxiety and less just came back, after I worked years to get over it. It will take time, I'm sure I'll get there again, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. My partner is telling me over and over again, reminding me of my worth, and I am sure one of these days it's going to stick. Thank you for your words.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
My mother always defended my older brother, but when he stole my younger brother's fiancée, our family could never be mended. My mother wants me and my brothers to overlook the fact that our younger brother's fiancée was stolen by our cunning golden child older brother. I never imagined that my family would fall apart in this way. A year ago, I would have laughed if someone had predicted that my elder brother, Caleb, would do something so heinous. My mother has always led us to believe that Caleb is the golden child, the one who did everything correctly. However, I can't stop thinking about how we got here as I sit here in my apartment and relive the nightmare that occurred only a few weeks ago. Logan's wedding, or what was meant to be Logan's wedding, was the beginning. Logan, my younger brother, is the most sincere individual I've ever encountered. He is a gentle, considerate man, who would give you his last dollar without hesitation. We were all overjoyed when he proposed to Avery. Avery seemed to love Logan as much as he loved her, and she was intelligent and humorous. Together, they were ideal. They were one of those couples you can tell is meant to be. And then there was Caleb. Even now, the details remain unclear. Logan and Avery were choosing flowers and completing the guest list one week. Avery was canceling the wedding the next week. Logan arrived at my door completely broken, which is why I can still clearly recall that day. His eyes were red-rimmed from sobbing, and his face looked pallid. He informed me that Avery had broken up with him. She simply stated that she couldn't carry it out without providing an explanation. I initially believed it might be chilly feet. Yes, that does happen. Weddings are a stressful event. Then, however, the truth was revealed. Avery and Caleb, who was supposed to be Logan's best man, appeared at a family BBQ less than 3 days later. We were all invited over for family time by my mom, Linda. I wanted to see how Logan was doing because I hadn't seen him since he arrived at my door crying. Caleb holding Avery's hand as they walked into the backyard as if it were the most natural thing in the world is something I will always remember. The whole yard fell silent, as if someone had put life on hold. As I tried to take in what I was seeing, I glanced at Avery and then at Caleb. "What on earth is this?" "Louder than I intended?" I asked. The king of smug smiles, Caleb, shrugged as if it didn't matter. He declared, "Avery and I are now together." Thankfully, Logan wasn't around, but my sister Riley dropped the pitcher of lemonade she was pouring. The patio's glass broke. I couldn't read my mother's expression as she looked at Caleb, but it wasn't one of shock. For me, that was the first warning sign. Linda had forewarned no one, but she instinctively knew this was happening. "You're kidding," I responded, trembling. Avery refused to look at me, so I hoped this was some terrible joke. Her face reddened with guilt, but she continued to stare at the grass. I've detested Caleb's calm down expression since we were young. In a frustratingly casual tone, he stated, "It's complicated, Mason. But everyone will benefit from this." "For everybody?" I lost my temper. "How about Logan? You just took your brother's fiancé, but what about that?" The term "stole" made Avery wince, but Caleb didn't even pause. The relationship between her and Logan didn't work out. "This wasn't planned," he said. I made sure he didn't finish though. Too furious to even look at him, I bounded away. Riley came into the kitchen after me. "Did you see Mom?" she said, trembling. "She said nothing at all. She seems to be fine with this." The second warning sign was that Caleb had always held a special place in Linda's heart. Being the eldest, he made the family proud with his corporate career and college degree. Logan and I, on the other hand, were just Logan and me. I used to make a joke about us being the family's spare parts, but it didn't feel humorous anymore. I gave Logan a call later that evening. I asked him if he was aware of Avery and Caleb. He didn't. He sounded hollow when I told him, not even upset. Silently. "Of course it was Caleb," he said. "It's always Caleb." The consequences were immediate. Riley completely cut all communication with Caleb. He dismissed my attempt to confront him once more, claiming that I was exaggerating. A few days later, my mother contacted me, her voice eerily serene. "Mason, we need to talk," she remarked. "About what?" Still fuming over Caleb and Avery, I inquired. "This weekend, we're having dinner at the house. Riley and you should come. It's time to put this behind us." I believed I had misheard her. Move past this? Logan was deceived by Avery. His heart was broken by her. Additionally, Caleb. She gently interrupted me, saying, "I know it's hard, but Caleb is still your brother. Despite his error, he is now content. Isn't that the important thing?" I couldn't speak. My mother, who was meant to defend us all equally, was once again taking Caleb's side. Riley rolled her eyes as I told her about the dinner. "Are you serious?" She is attempting to ignore this. Normal. I didn't disagree. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to leave, not for my mother or Caleb, but for Logan. I wanted him to know that he still had support. I was afraid of what I would discover when I arrived at my parents' house on Saturday. Riley was already there, crossing her arms as she sat on the porch. She said, "This is going to be a disaster," as I approached. I refrained from arguing. Caleb sat at the dining table as we entered, smiling as if he hadn't just split the family in two. Avery was also present, sitting next to him as if she were a part of the group. At the head of the table, our mother, Linda, was grinning as though nothing was amiss. "Come sit," she offered with a cheerful tone. "We're going to have a nice family dinner." Riley glanced at me as I gazed at her. I thought I may suffocate since the tension in the air was so heavy. However, as soon as I sat down, the catastrophe started. I was not interested in sitting at the table. To be honest, I wanted to just walk away and flip the fucking thing over. Riley and I had to speak for Logan because he wasn't present. Caleb needed to be called out. What everyone else was too cowardly to say had to be said. With a display of food so spotless that it seemed as though my mother, Linda, believed cooking could clean up this catastrophe, she stood at the head of the dinner table. She was grinning, bringing joy into the space as if she could make it material. Linda said, "Let's just sit down, eat, and talk." Riley whispered to herself, "I'd rather eat glass." As I glanced at her, Avery and Caleb were seated at the far end of the table. The sight of them together still made my blood boil. Avery. As if they were on a freaking date, Caleb had one arm thrown languidly over the back of her chair. However, Avery refused to look at Riley or at me. She continued to look at her dish with her head down, as though the mashed potatoes were the most amazing thing she had ever seen. I inquired, "Where's Logan?" I was surprised at how piercing my voice sounded. I got one of Linda's stoic "you're ruining this" expressions. Logan decided not to come. Riley answered, "Yeah, no kidding," while crossing her arms. "Wonder why?" Linda gave her a stern look but remained silent. She probably knew Riley wouldn't give up. Riley has always been the firecracker among us. Even though she is only 2 years my junior, she has never shied away from speaking her mind, particularly when it comes to Caleb. Caleb, who was buttering a roll as if he hadn't just exploded a nuclear bomb in our family, caught my attention. "So, Caleb," I replied, "you're just okay with all of this?" He gave me his angry, calm-down face as he gazed up at me. God, I detested that expression. Since we were young, he had been giving it to me as if he were superior, smarter, and older. He questioned, "What do you mean by this, Mason?" "This." I waved my hand at him and Avery and snapped. "Caleb, Logan's fiancé, was taken by you. The same Logan who asked you to be his best man because he trusted you enough. With this, are you kidding me?" With a heavy sigh, Caleb put down his butter knife, acting as though I was the one who was being unreasonable. "Look, Mason, this wasn't planned by Avery and me, and I know it's complicated. It just happened. Things just happened." Riley leaned forward in her chair and scoffed. "Is that your justification? You don't just happen to start dating your brother's fiancé?" Riley's comments made Caleb cringe, but he didn't raise his head. I was hoping she would stand up for herself and say something, but she just sat there and let Caleb speak. At last, displaying his aggravation, Caleb combed through his hair. "I won't just sit here and watch the two of you attack us. I have been open and honest with Avery. We're content together and don't require your blessing." "Honest?" I fired back. "You believe your treatment of Logan was sincere? You lacked the courage to tell him directly. Avery had to inform him when she decided to call off the wedding. That's enough." Across the table, Linda's voice could be heard. Mom gave me that familiar scowl of disapproval, the same one Mom used to talk back to me when I was a child. "We are not going to spend this dinner yelling at each other like children." Riley pushed her dish away and said, "Then maybe Caleb shouldn't have acted like one." Linda replied, "Riley, please," in a strained voice. "This isn't beneficial. The reason Caleb and Avery are here is to continue their family's journey. We must all extend forgiveness and move on from this." "Forgive and let this go?" Unable to believe what I was hearing, I gazed at her. "So you're just okay with this?" Slowly, I asked. "You're okay with what Caleb did to Logan?" Linda's expression softened, as though she were addressing a young kid who was just unable to comprehend the world. "Life is complex, Mason. Despite their mistakes, people should have the opportunity to be happy." "Happy?" Riley's fist slammed on the table as she burst. "Logan is wretched, Mom. You're behaving as if none of this is important. You're here acting like a hostess like it's Thanksgiving dinner after Caleb made him feel embarrassed." With his chair scuffing the wooden floor, Caleb got to his feet. "You know what? I don't have to sit here and have my home attacked. I've finished our talk." I yelled, "Sit down," in a low, menacing voice that even surprised me. I was so tired of Caleb walking away from everything: responsibility, consequences. "Logan, you don't get to walk in here with Avery like nothing happened and then act like we're the problem." At last, Avery raised her voice, but it was tremulous and quiet. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." I turned to her, and so did Riley. I questioned, my rage mixed with incredulity. "Then why did it?" Avery seemed to be waiting for approval before speaking as she glanced at Caleb. She inhaled deeply when he remained silent. "Caleb and we started talking months ago. At first, it was innocent but..." She paused. "He told me things about Logan. Things that made me doubt everything." "What things?" asked Riley. Avery stumbled over her words. "He said Logan didn't really love me, that he was just going through the motions because he felt like he had to settle down." Caleb ... I froze as everything came together. For months, Caleb had been sowing doubt in Avery's mind. That was his personality: attractive, cunning, and self-centered. Riley responded, "You've got to be kidding me," in a disgusted tone. "You let Caleb convince you Logan didn't love you? Logan adored you, Avery. Everyone could see it." Avery winced, but Caleb moved ahead of her while speaking in a chilly tone. "We're not going to sit here and let you two attack Avery. This conversation is over." "Fine," I responded as I got to my feet. "Then I guess I'll have this conversation with Logan instead. I'm sure he'll love hearing how his own brother was working behind the scenes to sabotage his relationship." Linda began. "Mason..." But I interrupted her. I turned and left, Riley following closely after me. "Logan deserves better than this, Mom. And if you can't see that, then I don't know what to tell you." Riley released a breath that she had obviously been holding as soon as the front door closed behind us. She mumbled, "Unbelievable. Caleb's not even sorry. He believes his own lies." I didn't respond. What Avery had revealed about Caleb getting into her head and manipulating her emotions had my head spinning. This was no fortuitous romance. For some reason, Linda was ignoring the fact that Caleb had been planning this for months. Riley turned to face me as we entered her vehicle and said, "We have to tell Logan." "I know," I replied. "But I don't think this ends here." And I was correct. It didn't. Riley's engine hummed through the peaceful ride to Logan's place. She remained silent, and I did too. The identical thought was running through both of our minds. How in the heck were we going to explain this to Logan? Avery calling off the wedding was one thing, but what about knowing that Caleb had been deceiving her for months? That seemed like a completely different animal. I kind of thought Logan wouldn't respond when we arrived at his house. With the exception of the occasional text, he had remained a phantom ever since the split. However, the door slowly opened, revealing Logan staring at us with black circles under his eyes. He appeared slimmer, as if he hadn't eaten. He said, "Hey," in a low voice. "Didn't think I'd see you guys tonight." I said, "Can we come in?" After a moment of hesitation, Logan moved aside to allow us to enter. The flat appeared as worn out as he was. The curtains were drawn, his couch appeared to be his bed these days, and takeout containers were piled on the coffee table. Logan laughed without laughter when he saw that I was staring. "Yeah, I know it's a mess. Take a seat," he said, sweeping papers from the cushions and pointing to the couch. Logan remained standing, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, while Riley and I sat. He appeared protective, as though he was aware that we weren't just stopping by. "What's up?" he finally inquired, his gaze darting between us. Riley didn't hold out. "Logan, we need to tell you something about Caleb." Logan stiffened as soon as she spoke Caleb's name. His eyes widened and his jaw tensed. "I don't want to talk about him," I whispered. "You need to hear this. It's about what really happened with Avery." Her name made Logan cringe. I thought he was going to throw us out, but he sat down in the armchair across from us after letting out a trembling breath. "Fine," he replied. "Say whatever you came here to say." I didn't mince words. Despite the pain, Logan deserved to know the truth. Avery told us tonight that Caleb had been talking to her for months. He told her things that made her believe you didn't really love her. At first, Logan's expression remained unchanged. He remained motionless as he gazed at me. He gently averted his gaze and squeezed his fists against his thighs, but I wasn't even positive he had heard me. He spoke the words. "So Caleb convinced her to leave me," in a whispery tone. "Manipulated her," said Riley again. He played with her head. "Logan," she stated. "She thought you were just settling for her because Caleb got in her ear." Logan gave a sour laugh, but it was devoid of humor. "Of course he did. That's Caleb. He's always been good at taking things that don't belong to him." I was astonished by the hostility in his voice. Logan has consistently maintained our family's composure. Logan is the quiet anchor if Riley is the firework and I am the middle child who is always caught in the between. He is not angry. He simply becomes depressed. Now though, he now had an angry expression. "He's done this before," Logan stated abruptly as he looked at the ground. Riley said, "What do you mean?" Logan's expression darkened as he looked up. "Do you honestly believe that this is the first time Caleb has taken anything that was rightfully mine? Do you recall my senior school soccer tryout?" Logan inquired. While attempting to piece things together, I scowled and said, "Yeah, you didn't make the team." "No, I did," Logan said with a sour smile. Caleb persuaded the coach that he would be a better option and that I was unreliable, even though I made the squad. It took me years to find out. While Caleb made varsity, I was dismissed. "What?" Riley's eyes widened. "Why didn't you say anything, Logan?" "Because nobody would have believed me," he shrugged, adding, "Caleb has always been the one. The golden boy is Caleb. Caleb is impervious to error." After hearing this, something clicked in my mind. Caleb had been our mother's world for years, charming, ambitious, and self-assured, everything an ideal oldest son should be. However, now that the cracks were showing, it became clear that he didn't just take things because he wanted them. He did it to win. To show that he was superior to the rest of us. "Logan," I continued slowly, "what do you suppose caused him to do this to Avery now?" Logan gave me a dumbfounded look and said, "Because he could. I've always made Caleb envious. It's not over. He does a good job of hiding it. Like he's taken everything else, I believe he decided to take away Avery after realizing how happy I was with her." Logan was right. This wasn't just about Avery. It was about Caleb needing to repeatedly demonstrate that he was the best, regardless of who he injured along the way. There was a brief period of silence. Riley appeared to want to punch a wall, and I felt sick to my stomach. Logan wiped his face and said, "You know what's the worst? I cherished her. I cherished her dearly. I also had faith in Caleb. I assumed he was pleased with me." I muttered, "I'm sorry," since I had no idea what else to say and it seemed so hollow. "You don't have to apologize to me," Logan said, shaking his head. "Please let me know what you plan to do about it." Riley grimaced. "What are you saying?" Logan's voice was harsh as he stated, "I mean, Caleb isn't done? You think he's simply going to stop after this? Mom is already on his side. I'm the bad one for not letting it go, but he'll keep making things up until the rest of the family forgives him. He acts in that manner." Riley and I looked at each other, and Logan was right. I hate to say it, but our mother was already setting the stage for us to go over this, and if we didn't do something, Caleb would win, as he usually does. Riley stated, "Mom needs to see what's going on, so we need to talk to her. She cannot continue to stand up for him." "Good luck with that," said Logan, snorting. "Until the day she passes away, Mom will stand up for Caleb. Your time is being wasted." Linda had always made excuses for Caleb, perhaps because he was the firstborn or because he reminded her of herself, but whatever the reason, she had been ignoring Caleb's behavior for years, and it had finally come to this point. I didn't want to believe that, but I knew deep down that Logan wasn't wrong. One thing was clear to me as I watched my younger brother sit in his damaged apartment, though: Caleb was not going to get away with this time. I firmly stated, "This time, we're not going to let him win." After giving me a long look, Logan nodded and said, "Good. Because I'm tired of being a punching bag for Caleb." I sensed a change in myself as Riley and I left Logan's apartment that evening. I was done being kind, done letting Caleb bully everyone while Linda applauded him, and it was time to face Caleb head on. This time, I wasn't going to hold back. Riley and I quickly decided what needed to happen next. Caleb needed to be confronted, really confronted, and not just about Avery. This was about everything that Caleb had been doing for years, including manipulating people, twisting circumstances, and making himself appear like the ideal son while ignoring the rest of us. Logan was correct. Caleb wouldn't stop unless he was forced to, and we were going to force him. When Riley and I unexpectedly arrived at our parents' house the following morning, Linda opened the door, looking astonished to see us and as though she had been up all night worrying. To be honest, good. Her grin was forced. "Mason, Riley," she continued. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk to Caleb," I said as I walked into the living room, sweeping past her. Linda groaned deeply as she shut the door, and Riley trailed behind me. "This again? Can't you just?" she asked, her voice already worn out. Riley interrupted, turning to stare at her saying, "No, Mom. We can't." "Is Caleb present?" I inquired. "He's upstairs, but I don't know why you," Linda said after hesitating, then nodded. "Perfect," I murmured as I made my way up the stairs. Linda called after me and said, "Mason, don't start anything." Linda had let Caleb for too long, and it was time for someone to do what she wouldn't do, so I disregarded her. I didn't care what Linda thought at this point. Caleb was sitting on his bed with his laptop open when Riley and I marched up the stairs and down the hallway to his old bedroom. The door was half open, so we didn't bother knocking, and I pushed it open. His face twisted into a mixture of smugness and annoyance when he looked up and saw us. "To whom am I due this distinction? Here to lecture me some more?" Caleb replied, leaning back against the wall and shutting his laptop. I crossed my arms and remarked, "We're here for answers, not to lecture you." "I've already explained everything," Caleb said, rolling his eyes. "I didn't plan this with Avery, it just happened. Why aren't you all able to accept that and go on?" "Because it's a lie," Riley said. "Avery told us that you had been peeping into her head for months. You were ruining her friendship with Logan the entire time, Caleb." Even as Caleb's face reddened, his arrogant look persisted. "So? What? Relationships are always ending. Logan's inability to retain her is not my fault. You think this is a game, don't you?" I said, stiffening my fists at my sides as I walked toward him. "You're not even sorry for what you did. Why would I?" "Logan was never right for Avery," Caleb retorted. "I was kind to her." "You took her," Riley screamed. "You can't stand seeing other people happy, so you tricked her into leaving Logan." "Watch it, Riley," Caleb said as he got to his feet, his face changing to a more icy one. "You have no idea what you're discussing." I answered softly, "Oh, we know precisely what we're talking about." "Caleb, You've been doing this for years. Stealing what belongs to Logan, undermining him, and claiming to be the golden child while the rest of us suffer as a result. You're being dramatic. Caleb grinned. Am I? Logan told us about the soccer team, how you persuaded the coach to cut him so you could take his place, I shot back. Does that sound familiar? For a brief moment Caleb's grin wavered, but he immediately got back to it. That was years ago. Who gives a damn? Logan is concerned. Just like you ruined this, you ruined that for him, Riley yelled. Caleb chuckled, but it was a mocking, bitter laugh. You guys are unbelievable, he said. Do you believe that I am the bad guy? Logan is pitiful, he was and always has been. He allows others to walk all over him because he is weak. Avery chose me because I'm superior to him. I didn't steal her. Riley stepped forward and poked a finger at Caleb's chest, saying, You're not better than anyone, Caleb. Even though I could feel my fury boiling. The only reason you get away with being a manipulator and a liar is because Mom allows it. Caleb snarled. Leave Mom out of this. Why? Riley retorted. We all know you're her favorite. No matter what you do, she will stand up for you. Linda suddenly materialized in the doorway. What's happening in here? With a strong voice, she demanded. Riley turned to stare at her and added, Ask your perfect son. Adding that he had recently confessed to coercing Avery into leaving Logan. Linda turned to face Caleb as her face went white. Is that true? Of course not. Caleb answered softly, his voice flowing. Mom, they're misrepresenting what I said. I didn't do it. You claim that Avery picked you because you're superior to Logan, Riley yelled. Linda's expression was unreadable as she turned to face Caleb, who gave her a wide, naive look, as he often did when he had to get out of trouble. Come on, Mom, you are familiar with me, I would never act in such a manner. For a while, I hoped that Linda would finally recognize Caleb for who he truly was, but she hesitated, and I could see the doubt in her eyes. Then, as usual, she folded. Her voice was tense as she replied, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. We're not going to solve anything by yelling. Riley laughed bitterly and said, It's unbelievable. You continue to protect him. I'm not defending anyone, Linda responded. But I'm not going to let this family fall apart over a relationship that didn't work out. This family already is falling apart, I whispered quietly. And it's because of Caleb. Caleb looked bored and shrugged, saying, Cry about it. I finished our talk. Riley snapped, No. We're done with you. What is the intended meaning of that? Caleb narrowed his brows and asked. I said, Logan's done. It means we're not letting you win this time. Riley is finished. I am too. You're by yourself. You can't just cut me out of the family, Caleb said, looking truly shaken for the first time. Watch us, replied Riley icily. Mom, you can act like Caleb is flawless all you want, but the rest of us aren't playing along anymore, I said, turning to Linda, who appeared stunned. Either you're with us or you're with him. You make the decision. Linda gave me a slap-like look and said, You can't ask me to choose. Riley remarked softly. You simply aren't aware that you've already made your decision. I believe that Caleb recognized that he had finally lost control and pushed himself too far since he didn't say anything as we were leaving, and for once, he didn't have a smug response or a lazy shrug. I was relieved as Riley and I left the house because, although Caleb might not be facing actual repercussions today, he would eventually, people like him usually do, and I wasn't going to be there to catch him when he fell for the first time. After that altercation, we didn't hear from either Caleb or Linda for a few days. To be honest, I believe they were both waiting for us to return, as we always did, especially with Linda. In our family, things had always gone like this. Caleb made a mistake, Mom covered it up, and the rest of us had to keep our mouths shut for the sake of keeping the peace, but not this time. You have no idea how long I felt like I was screaming into a void, I added, and Logan actually appeared glad when we told him about what had transpired at the home. It's about time, he muttered, shaking his head. Riley and I had made our decision. Linda made several attempts to contact us over the course of the following week, first by phone and then by text, but each message was the same. Family doesn't behave like this, so we need to communicate. Caleb is your brother, and while I understand your anger, this has gone too far. You don't fully comprehend the story. Let's discuss this over dinner. We chose to ignore her. Riley, Logan, and I were all on the same page for the first time, and it felt liberating. Caleb was no longer our responsibility, so we didn't have to comply if Linda wanted to hold on to him. Caleb wasn't finished though. On a Thursday night, I received a call from an unknown number. I don't typically accept such, but for some reason, I decided to answer. Hello, Mason. I remained silent for a moment, almost expecting Caleb to knock on my door, but I was still taken aback when I heard his voice. It sounded desperate, not cocky or arrogant. What are you looking for? With a flat voice I asked. Caleb hurriedly continued. I need to talk to you. It's important. Hard pass. His voice trembled. Mason, please. And I was shocked because Caleb demanded things instead of asking for them. I answered, against my better judgment. All right. Don't talk on the phone. In an hour, meet me at the depot, please. I didn't want to attend, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that something wasn't right. The depot was an old diner we used to frequent as kids, and it felt strangely symbolic, as if Caleb was trying to exploit some shared history to guilt me into listening. I didn't recognize Caleb for a moment when I entered the depot an hour later and saw him sitting at a booth in the corner. He had bags under his eyes as if he hadn't slept in days, and his normally flawless hair was unkempt. Caleb, what do you want? I questioned, slipping into the seat across from him. He didn't immediately respond, instead looking down at the table with his fingers tapping nervously. I messed up, he finally stated in a hushed voice. With a sour laugh, I said, yeah, no kidding. No, Mason, I made a huge mistake, more than you thought. I had never seen Caleb this afraid, and there was something about the way he said it that made the hair on the back of my neck rise up. What are you discussing? I inquired. After inhaling deeply, Caleb shakily exhaled. I'm in trouble. Bad luck. I saw panic for the first time in his eyes as he glanced up at me. What sort of issue? With quivering fingers, Caleb ran a hand through his hair and nodded. Debt. I owe a lot of people a lot of money. Mason, I made an effort to correct it, but it got out of hand. His voice broke as he trailed off. Avery. What are you saying? I asked, feeling sick to my stomach. I think I've never seen Caleb seem so embarrassed as he looked at me. I needed money, he said. I reasoned that by getting to know Avery better, I might be able to persuade her to assist me. Her family is wealthy, so I reasoned that perhaps. You made use of her? Startled, I cut in. You used Avery as leverage because of your debt? Despite his recoil, Caleb said. I didn't intend for it to get this far. Although I didn't anticipate her leaving Logan for me, I was unable to stop it once it got going. Caleb had not simply taken Logan's fiancée because he wanted to win, he had done it out of desperation. He had played with Avery's emotions, ruined Logan's life, and split our family apart in order to hide the catastrophe he had created for himself. I gazed at him, trying to take in what he had just said. Is Mom aware? Quietly, I inquired. No, and she can't, Caleb said, shaking his head. If she learns, I'm finally able to recognize you for who you truly are. Good, I responded sourly. She is entitled to the truth. Caleb's voice was suddenly begging, please, Mason, I need your assistance. I have no other people. Aid you? I chuckled incredulously. Are you serious? After all of your actions? Caleb said. You're my brother. Family is meant to stay together. Don't you dare pull the family card, I responded. You don't get to hide behind that after what you did to Logan. Like a drowning man pleading for a life raft, Caleb gazed at me and said, please. Without you, I am unable to resolve this. I felt nothing for Caleb for the first time in my life, no rage or hatred, just emptiness. He was no longer my brother, he was just a man who had ruined every relationship he had ever had. I got up and said, Caleb, you need help, but it won't come from me. Caleb started to disagree, but before he could say anything more, I left. Later that night, Riley, Logan, and I convened at my place, and for once, no one was shocked when I told them all Caleb had confessed. Logan said, he's always been like this. It just took him this long to fall apart. How about Mom? Should we tell her? Riley said. After giving it some serious thought, I shook my head and said, no. She's made up her mind. Let her if she wants to think Caleb is flawless. We're done with him though, alongside her. With everything. I had spent my entire life trying to keep this family together, but now I know that sometimes you have to let things fall apart. For the first time in years, I felt free. Neither Linda nor Caleb were my burden anymore. With a small smile on his lips, Logan turned to face Riley and me and said, you think we'll be all right? Yeah, I replied with a smile. We'll be all right. And I did believe it for once.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.